So in the previous class, we had started with the Vijayanagar Empire, that it was in the 14th century. It was first started by Harihara and Bukka, who have served as governors under Muhammad bin Tughlaq. And they eventually rejected the Delhi authority, and they have established their independent place. And that is what they have grown in the southern part of India. And then to the north of this Vijayanagar Empire is the Deccan Sultanates, which were from the Bahmani Sultanate. That is, the Bahmani Sultanate was just broken down into 5 parts, which are later known to be as the Deccan Sultanates. That is the Bijapur, Golconda, Berar, Ahmednagar, and Bidar. And the Vijayanagar have to fight, or they fought wars with both Bijanagar and Golconda, and also with the Gajpati rulers of Odisha, which is in the east. And then in the 16th century, there was the entrance of Krishnadevaraya, who has just increased the reputation of Vijayanagar Empire both in culture, art, and also expanded vast parts of over the Deccan. And he's shown interest in art and literature, and he has always given a special place for poets in his court, and he has given special interest for Telugu and Kannada, and he's also composed a poem in Telugu. He has composed himself, which is Amukta Malyada, which is mainly on the very Tamil poet saint Andal. And there was also a part of this poem that is Rajaniti, which is the king's policy, was also royal policy, was also one section of his work. And then he has also worked or given grants for Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh, the temple Tirumala, and also the Vitla in his capital Vijayanagara. And then he has died of illness in the year 1529. And then in 1565, the Vijayanagar forces have been defeated by the Deccan Sultanate. The Deccan Sultanates have formed a collision among themselves, and they have defeated the Vijayanagar forces, which were led by Ramaraya and also Sri Krishnadevaraya's son-in-law in the Battle of Talikota. And then the empire has come to an end in the mid of 17th century, and there was a huge chaos because there was a loss of a huge property and life. And then we have spoke about the Mughals, starting with Babur, who was from the Taimur dynasty. We already studied that Taimur was a brutal leader and all this. And then in his descendant is Babur, who has been thrown out of Samarkand, the modern day Uzbekistan, and then he has turned his sights towards India. And in the first battle of Panipat, he has defeated Ibrahim Lodi by using and then there was use of gunpowder and field artillery and matchlock guns, which were recently used in warfare in India. And he has defeated Ibrahim Lodi, who has excelled. And then he has gained control and formed the Mughal Empire. And his throne was in Delhi. And then after his death in 1530, Babur has died in the year 1530, and then his son Humayun wanted to take, but he has struggled a lot to hold the empire together. And then taking this as an advantage, there was the entry of Sher Shah Suri as well, who is Afghan leader who has established the Sur Empire. And then after Humayun came Akbar, who had been the declared emperor at the age of 13 after the accidental death of his father. And then he has also a great strategist, he is very ambitious, and he has gained control of most parts of India, and he had fought many wars, and he was also somewhat brutal, or he has followed the ideas of his forefathers as well. And one such example we were given about the Chittorgarh, and how the women have committed Johar and all those things were studied. And then after that, being a strategist, he has also kept many marriage alliances with Rajput rulers, and he has also gained or spoke about interfaith, respecting all the faiths and all these things, and also appointed Hindu officials in his court. And then after that, he has a long reign that has lasted for about 50 years, and he has died in the year 1605. And then came his son Jahangir, who has also been or followed his father's path, and he has a love for art and architecture, and he had also expanded his kingdom into the Deccan. And then came his son Shah Jahan, whom we all know as the one who has built the Taj Mahal, and he has also given interest in art and architecture, and under his rule there were many buildings of the Humayun's tomb in Delhi, the Red Fort in Delhi and Agra and all those things. And he is also given special place for classical arts and music. And then after that we can see that in the Delhi Sultanate, the transition from one emperor to another was violent, and this has again happened from the transition between Shah Jahan to Aurangzeb, because Aurangzeb wanted to give his throne to the first son, who was Dara Shikoh, who was Shah Jahan's eldest son. But Dara's younger brother, who was Aurangzeb, wanted the kingdom, and so he has fought several battles with his brother and also executed him. And he has presented the severed head to his father and also imprisoned him until he died. And then Aurangzeb has also made many expansions to his kingdom, and he has imposed taxes on people which have been abolished at the time of Akbar. That is the pilgrimage tax and the jizya tax, and all those were abolished by Akbar, but they were again installed or re-established by Aurangzeb. And then after Aurangzeb, almost the Mughals have come to an end, because they were not consistent and there were always instabilities, and there were also huge resistance to the Mughals. And one such examples we have given about the Jat peasantry, and many tribal groups have also resisted to the Mughals. And we also studied about Rani Durgavati. Now in this part we'll be starting with the surge of the Rajputs. Starting with the surge of the Rajputs. Because of the location in the northwest India and the proud traditions they inherited from the early dynasties such as Pratiharas, who have insisted or resisted the Arab invasions of Sindh a few centuries earlier, the Rajputs were often battling the invading forces from beyond the subcontinent, and they had built their kingdoms after the Khilji's conquest. And the two major clans which emerged in this process were the Mewar and the Marwar regions. So the inspirational stories of their heroic deeds are still told today, and in particular through the popular ballads. Among the valorous rulers those clans produced, we already met about Ranakumbha earlier. So there was a surge in the Rajputs' rule after the Arab invasions of the Sindh, or after the Khilji's conquest. After the Khilji's conquest, that is, two major Rajput clans have been formed. The first one is the Mewar and the Marwar. And even now, the bravery of these Rajputs was told in the songs form, which we popularly call the ballads. So, we've already studied about Rana Kumbha, who had ruled over the Mewar kingdom, which is in Rajasthan. So, next about Rana Sanga. Earlier 16th century, unified several Rajput clans, won many wars against sultans, ultimately meeting defeat against Babur at the Battle of Kanwa. So, Rana Singha has united most of the Rajput clans and has fought wars against the sultans, but he was defeated by Babur in the Battle of Kanwa. So, until now, we have come across the first Battle of Panipat and the Battle of Talikota, and then we have come across now the Battle of Kanwa. So, although he inherited a wounded kingdom from his predecessors, Mewa's ruler Maharana Pratap refused to accept the Mughal suzerainty and became the face of Rajput resistance. So, even though his kingdom was not complete or it was not strong enough, but the Mewar ruler, who was Maharana Pratap, has refused to accept the Mughal supremacy, and he had become the face of Rajput resistance. That is, he had led the Rajput resistance. And a confrontation took place at Haldigati Pass in the Aravallis in 1576, And although the Mughal army had the upper hand, Maharana Pratap escaped and pursued for years guerrilla warfare, a style of fighting where small groups with knowledge of the terrain carried out surprise attacks against the Mughals from the Aravalli hills and living in harsh conditions but firm on his independence. So he had also had a confrontation which has took place in the Haldi Ghati, which is in the pass in the Aravallis in the year 1576. Even though there was an upper hand for the Mughal army there, even though the Mughals were about to win, he had escaped from that place and he had mastered or he has pursued the guerrilla warfare. That is, if a person is living in a particular place for a long period of time, or it may be some hills or forest area, then he could know every keen detail about it, which the outsiders wouldn't know. So when he had learned this guerrilla warfare, that these small groups of people would have knowledge about that place where they are, and they can attack secretly, which the outsiders would find it very difficult for them to come to know and then attack back or fight back. So that is what he has learned in this special warfare, and he has also fought against the Mughals from the Aravalli hills, living in those harsh conditions, but he was very firm in his idea. And it is noteworthy that Maharana Pratap received strong support from the Bills, that is the tribal groups. It is important that if the tribal groups weren't so accepting for the king, then it will be even difficult for him to do or fight for independence. So Bills have given him a very strong support, who not only joined his troops as archers but have also contributed their knowledge of the terrain. So only the king, if he go and live in that place, he will never know the true advantages of that place. So there was a support from the tribal people who had already lived in that place for a huge number or many years, and they have shared their instincts or ideas, and then they were able to cope up against the Mughal forces. And the service on other occasions to earn them respected place in the Mawar's military tradition, as the Mawar symbol shows. So here we can see the naval symbol with a bill warrior on the left. So that is the importance, or that is the support they have given for Maharana Pratap to fight back against the Mughals. While some Rajput states eventually allied with the Mughals through diplomacy and marriage alliances, some, especially Mewar, did not accept the Mughal dominance. So even though there were two groups in the Rajputs, that is, some have formed alliances with Mughals either through diplomacy or through marriage alliances. So either they had marital relations with them, or they just accepted through diplomacy. There was one group which has been alongside the Mughals, while the other group, one such example is the Mewar groups, did not accept the Mughal supremacy. So during Aurangzeb's reign, several Rajput nobles have rebelled, including Durga Das Rathore of Marwar, who fought to protect the independence of Jodhpur, and the Mughal authority thus remained limited in Rajasthan. So they had less invasion into Rajasthan because the Rajput rulers in that place had led the fight of independence. Next is the Ahoms. So in the 13th century, the Ahom ethnic groups migrated from the present-day Myanmar to the Brahmaputra Valley and formed the Ahom kingdom there. So in the 13th century, this ethnic group, a particular group, has shifted from present-day Myanmar to the Brahmaputra Valley and formed their kingdom there, which is the Ahom kingdom. And during both the Sultanate and the Mughal periods, the Ahom rulers have offered stiff resistance to the attempts at invasion into the northeast. Their unique pike systems called on every able-bodied man to provide service to the state either through labor or military duties in exchange for land rights. So this allowed the rulers to create public infrastructure and maintain a large standing force without a permanent army. So this Ahom kingdom did not have a permanent army. So whenever there was a possible attack or war, they could ask, or they would use a unique system that is called the pike system, where every able-bodied man would come either for a labor duty or as for the military duties in exchange for the land rights. So they were promised to provide land rights if they come and fight for their place, their kingdom. So either for labor or for the military, that is in the warfare. So even though they didn't have a permanent army, but they were able to withstand the Mughals and the Sultanate's invasions because they were large standing force. That is, whenever they wanted, they'll come, they'll fight, and they'll again return back. Even though there was no permanent army, but they had a very huge force, because every time you want an army to be settled at one place, then very less people will be available. But whenever you collect the general common people to come into warfare, then you will have a large standing force. So over time, the Ahoms assimilated the local culture and promoted agriculture, encouraged diverse faiths, and contributed to rich traditions of Assam. So they have generally, after some time, they have assimilated, that is made free with the local culture, and promoted the agriculture and encouraged diverse faiths and contributed to rich traditions. So there's a reason why Assam has such great traditions until now. So in the 17th century, when Aurangzeb sent Mughal forces briefly capturing the Ahom capital, which is Gargaon, the Ahoms used their knowledge of the terrain, which we have seen how the Rana Pratap has also used in the Aravalli Hills. In the same way, they have also used their knowledge of the terrain, that is the forest, hills and rivers, and persistent guerrilla tactics to repulse the attack. And although they later had more men and larger fleet of river boats, even though the Mughal forces had a greater population of the men in the war and they had larger rivers, river boats and all those things, but these people, the Ahoms, had knowledge of the place where they are fighting. So notably, in the battle of Saraigat in 1671, fought on the Brahmaputra River near the present-day Guwahati, the Ahom military commander Lachit Borphukan and his 10,000 men defeated a Mughal force of 30,000 soldiers, and ultimately the Ahom was able to preserve their independence. So you can see that the Mughal forces were 30,000, while the Ahom has defeated the with only 10,000 men, whose military commander was Lachit Borphukan. There was a variation in between these. Even though they had more men, the Mughals had more men and better equipment, that is the river boats and all the armed forces, but the Ahoms had a knowledge about where they're fighting, the place, the forest, the hills and the rivers, and with these tactics and the techniques, they were able to fight back against the Mughals and preserve their independence. Next part is the rise of the Sikhs. So in the 15th century Punjab, Guru Nanak has spread the message of equality, compassion and oneness of God, and his followers came to be known as Sikhs. So those people who follow Guru Nanak are said to be called as Sikhs. So although Sikhism began purely a spiritual movement, the later Sikh gurus had to respond to the growing intolerance and persecution under some Mughal rulers. So initially it was like a spiritual movement, but later on, when a later Sikh gurus had to respond to the Mughal forces because it was becoming intolerant, because it was becoming more violent, so their spiritual motive or the movement have to be started to actually stop the invasions. So when Emperor Jahangir found out that Guru Arjan has supported his rebellious son, he had Guru Arjan tortured to death. And this promoted Guru Arjan's son and successor Guru Har Gobind to introduce martial training and form a Sikh army which fought several battles against the Mughal forces. So you can see that when Emperor Jahangir found out that Guru Arjan has supported his rebellious son, he had Guru Arjan tortured to death. So this has prompted the Guru Arjan's son and successor Guru Har Gobind. So you can see that there was a succession. First, starting with Guru Arjan, and then he has supported his rebellious son. So Emperor Jahangir wasn't accepting that. So he had executed Guru Arjan. And then came the Guru Arjan's son and successor, who is Guru Har Gobind, to start martial training and form a Sikh army, and they have fought many wars against the Mughals itself. And the year 1675, a group of Kashmiri Pandits approached Guru Teng Bahadur seeking protection from religious persecutions. So in the year 1675, the Kashmiri Pandits have approached the Guru Teng Bahadur seeking the religious persecutions, and Guru has decided to stand with them and quote varied them and arrested Aurangzeb, ordered him to convert to Islam. So this Guru Teng Bahadur, who wanted to support the Kashmiri Pandits, was arrested and he was ordered to convert into Islam. So even though with all the torture and witnessing two of his disciples being tortured to death, even though Guru has not converted into Islam. So on Aurangzeb's order, he was publicly beheaded in Chandni Chowk in Delhi, and in response to this, his son Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th and last Guru, established the Khalsa, a martial brotherhood committed to justice, equality and defense of the faith, which frequently clashed with the Mughal forces at the cost of their life. So we can see that Guru Teng Bahadur was beheaded in Chandni Chowk, and then in response to this, his son Guru Gobind Singh has started or established the Khalsa, a marital brotherhood, he was the 10th and the last Guru. It is important to remember that Guru Gobind Singh was the last Guru, and they had frequently clashed with the Mughal forces, even though at the cost of their lives. So we can see that Ahoms, Eastern Ganga Kingdom, Jagapati Kingdom, Hoysalas, Bahmani, Rajputs, Sikhs, Delhi or the Mughal Sultanates. So this graphic sums up the chief dynasties which are involved in this chapter, which we have readied with a rough identification of their geographical locations. So the Sikh Empire, which spanned much of the northwest, including parts of Kashmir, until the mid-19th century, this empire resisted both the Mughal remnants and the British invasions as well. So they have resisted both the Mughals and the British invasions. So with this, we have completed studying about the major kingdoms, and the next part will be starting with administering India, how the Delhi Sultanate and the Akbar or the Mughal rules have administered on India.